When a public institution loses its way, it rarely happens overnight. It happens slowly, decision by decision, edit by edit, one nervous meeting at a time. And that's how it feels now at the BBC. On Sunday, the Director General Tim Davie and the CEO of BBC News Deborah Turness both announced their resignations. On paper, it's just a change at the top. But in truth, it feels like something much larger. A moment when Britain's most trusted broadcaster stopped being able to trust itself. Davie and Turness weren't villains. They were supposed to be the grown-ups, steady, pragmatic leaders who'd steer the corporation through political pressure, audience decline, and that endless chorus of, is the licence fee still worth it? And yet they leave behind a BBC that feels smaller than ever, cautious, confused, and constantly apologising for existing. The BBC has been through storms before, from the Hutton inquiry to Jimmy Savile, Brexit to Gary Lineker. The pattern's always been the same: scandal, outrage, inquiry, reform, repeat. But the last few months have been something different. A documentary that chopped up a Donald Trump speech so misleadingly it was branded fake news by his own supporters, and to their credit, even the BBC had to admit they got it wrong. A Gaza documentary fronted by the son of a Hamas official, a decision so tone-deaf it felt almost deliberate. And then Glastonbury, a live broadcast of a performance that carried chants of death to the IDF, defended in the moment, denied in the aftermath, and finally contextualised in a statement so muddled it could have been written by ChatGPT. One by one, these moments have chipped away at the BBC's greatest asset: credibility. Not just accuracy, credibility. The difference is that credibility is emotional. It's trust. It's the sense that even if you don't agree with the BBC, you still believe it's trying to tell the truth. And now that belief is wobbling. Davie and Turness didn't cause every scandal, but they presided over the culture that made them possible, and worse, the culture that made the response so bloodless. The BBC doesn't apologise anymore, it issues clarifications. It doesn't correct errors, it revises coverage. It has become an organisation terrified of saying the wrong thing, yet somehow always managing to do exactly that. It's the paralysis of self-consciousness, a broadcaster so afraid of being seen as biased that it's become biased towards blandness. The thing is, the BBC's problem isn't bias. Bias is human, it can be managed, debated, corrected. The problem is fear. Fear of politicians. Fear of tabloids. Fear of upsetting online mobs. Fear of losing young audiences who no longer sit down at 10 o'clock for the evening news. Fear of offending anyone, anywhere, about anything. It's the fear that creeps into editorial meetings. The fear that makes journalists second-guess every word. The fear that replaces instinct with checklist and conviction with caution. I've worked in radio broadcasting long enough to recognise that look, the one in a producer's eyes when they're not asking, is this true? But will we get complaints? And when that happens, the work is already compromised. And that's what the BBC has become. A masterpiece of management and a graveyard of courage. But let's step back a bit. How did we get here? Well, part of it's the politics. The BBC has spent years being battered by governments that see it as a nuisance. Too liberal, too London, too powerful. Ministers attack it, then pose with it. Each new administration calls for reform, which usually means obedience. And then there's the money. The licence fee, frozen, chipped away, endlessly debated. A funding model built for a world where everyone watched the same screen now looks like a relic from a more innocent time. And finally, there's the culture. The quiet, slow drift from mission to metrics. The BBC used to ask, what do people need to know? Now it asks, how do we reach them? Those are not the same question. One leads to journalism, the other to content strategy. Inside the newsroom, morale has crumbled. Reporters whisper about self-censorship, editors play safe, and producers are told to be more mindful of tone. Tone, that strange corporate euphemism for don't upset anyone powerful. Even the public can hear it. Watch the news tonight and you'll notice it too. The hesitant delivery, the qualifiers piled on top of qualifiers, the word allegedly used like a seatbelt. It's the sound of an organisation afraid of its own authority. And yet even now the BBC clings to the slogan, holding power to account. But lately, it seems more interested in holding itself together. The irony is painful. For all its flaws, the BBC is still the one broadcaster that genuinely belongs to the public. It's funded by us, shaped by us, and it's supposed to speak for us. But somewhere along the way it started speaking in a language we no longer recognise. Managerial, vague, apologetic. The great British broadcaster, once the voice of truth, now sounds like it's reading its own HR policy aloud. And here's the hard truth. You can't rebuild public trust with trust strategies. You rebuild it by being brave, by being transparent, by admitting that mistakes happen because journalism is messy, not because people are evil or stupid, but because truth is complicated. When you tell people the truth, even the uncomfortable kind, they forgive you. When you spin them corporate half sentences about ongoing reviews, they switch off. And I think that's what this moment is really about. Not two resignations, but a reckoning. The BBC has spent years trying to survive the internet age by becoming less like itself. And in doing so, it's lost the very thing that made it matter. That quiet confidence that truth, even imperfect truth, was worth defending. And yet, and this may surprise you, I don't feel anger so much as sadness. Because for all its chaos, the BBC is part of who we are. It's there in the sound of the pips, the solemnity of the news, the way, and now on BBC One, still feels like a national heartbeat. To see it stumble like this feels personal, like watching an old friend lose faith in themselves. Maybe Davey and Turness leaving will make space for renewal. Or maybe it's just the latest rearrangement of the deck chairs on a slowly sinking ship. But that depends on who comes next, and whether they still believe in public service as something more than a slogan. And maybe that's where local broadcasting comes in. In community radio, you don't get to hide behind corporate statements. You're accountable in real time. If you make a mistake, someone will tell you about it before the next advert break, and when you admit it, when you apologise honestly, people forgive you. They know you, they trust you. And that's how public broadcasting is supposed to work. Not through scale or ratings or social media reach, through presence, through honesty, through the human connection between broadcaster and listener. Maybe the BBC needs to remember that. Maybe it needs to get smaller in order to feel bigger again, to sound human again. Because for all its technology and reach and global ambition, the thing people loved about the BBC was simple. It felt like it was on your side. If the BBC can rediscover that, not the brand, not the bureaucracy, but the belief, then these resignations might one day look like a beginning and not an end. But if it can't, then we'll look back on the last few days as the moment Britain quietly stopped believing in its greatest storyteller. And what a tragedy that would be. I'm Rob Francis. Thank you for listening to the TV Life podcast.